Firstly, I want to ask you about Lloyd Kelly, who last night, completed his move to Juventus on loan with the obligation to buy. Why did you decide to let him leave?
Yeah, I don't think it was necessarily. I get the question, but I don't think it was necessarily, my decision to let him leave. I think it's very reluctant from our side because Lloyd, a player that had just recently signed, and we believed in him and his qualities. Slightly frustrating for him that he hadn't played more, but in part really due to the form of the other players around him. But I think we're in the world, and we have been this window of trying to manage PSR and trying to make decisions that benefit us in the long term, and this is one of those decisions. So Lloyd leaves with our best wishes. He's certainly exemplary attitude in his time here. I'm sure he'll do well in Italy, and it's an exciting new challenge for him.
When I said you, I meant you as the club, not necessarily you personally.
Just clearing that up, Reza.
Yeah. It sounds like it's another one of those decisions that you've talked about this month, or you've been asked questions about, where it's sort of business and finance over football again.
Yes, it is. I think I said right at the start in the build up to the window that it was not a case really of looking at incomings. It was a case of trying to manage outgoings really, and trying to not weaken the squad to a point where the team's affected. But we also future plan and make sure that we control everything in terms of our PSR level. So I think we've done that. I think it's been successful in that side. I think the two sales, the two players go with our best wishes. They're two great lads. The squad now is lighter in numbers, but high in quality. So I think for us, managing injuries, etc., will be a big part of what we do now. In this part of the season coming up, there's still no reason why we can't be successful. But yeah, hopefully the future looks a little bit brighter for us around the corner.
And you say lighter in numbers there, but nobody else left. How important was that, whether they were big names, star players, or fringe players, that nobody else departed?
Yeah, of course, from my side, I think we want a competitive team on the pitch, and I know everyone feels the same way. And you've always got to guard you. Like, we've got, I think, 2 injuries at the moment, with Callum coming back and Harvey Barnes still out and Jamal Lascelles out. So we don't have sort of a huge burden of injuries at the moment, but we still have a tight squad. So that's why I say that managing that with the games we have to come is going to be hugely important to us. We need to try and keep everyone that we have fit and available, remaining that way, so we can be competitive for the remainder of the season.
Looking ahead to the match, 2-0 up after the first leg at the Emirates Stadium, but is your message that this tie is not over?
I think my message is, look, we're at the halfway point of the tie. I think it's, the away game was a good performance from us, but of course, against any opposition, the game's still very much alive, and we have to do our part. But I think then when you add the quality of Arsenal and what the team that they have, we know very much we have to be on our guard. I think we just have to approach the game in a really positive way, aggressive way. We have to very much try and be ourselves in every moment. There'll be no deviation from that from our perspective. Front foot performance at home, we need to engage the crowd. We're in a good position, and we need to try and make the most of every opportunity.
And finally, you have done that against the top teams throughout your time here, haven't you? And this season you've beaten Arsenal twice, the away leg, and also at home in the Premier League. When you've had these big matches, often it's brought out the best in your team, hasn't it?
Historically, yes, and I think that's been a combination of us and the crowd. I think we've become a really potent team together, and I think that's what we're going to need in this game. We're going to need to absolutely engage all our supporters in our energy and our body language, and every power that we possess to involve them in the game, because we need to make this a really formidable environment for our opponent. We need to create really positive energy between us. It's our duty to do that, and we'll try to do that.
Thanks, Reza. Keith?
Eddie, how's the overall feeling, the overall mood sort of in the camp after the weekend? Because it felt after the Bournemouth game that was perhaps a one-off, but I'm guessing there'll be disappointment on your part that there was another home defeat.
Yeah, definitely disappointment. I think very little time to dwell on that defeat, Keith. I think it was one of those moments where we analysed it and reflected on it, but then very quickly had to move forward. We had a game in midweek, which is a good thing for us to put that game away and focus now on the future, bright future, hopefully for us. A massive game, massive incentive for us to go into this game in a clear head, and I think that's what we needed. So yes, we learnt the lessons and we know we could do better, but very much now focusing on this one.
Is there any concerns over the home form, because it felt like you were getting back to a strong position there? You've lost the last two, and additionally there's an evening game against Arsenal in a cup semi-final. Does it have a different feel about it than perhaps a league match at home?
Yeah, I think it's a one-off game. I think we need to approach it that way. It's not. I do think it's a quite unique circumstance. So I think for us, the Premier League takes a back seat. We then move on after this game to the FA Cup. So we will address, of course, a couple of things that we need to improve. But I don't think deep analysis in this moment of time is what we needed. I think it was, right, what do we need now in the next game? And then we'll come back to that at a later date.
You mentioned managing the injury situation. How's Joelinton after the weekend?
Yeah, Joey was, after the game, put in a knee brace. Just as a precaution, he's out of that knee brace now. We'll assess how he is for this game. I'd say he's a doubt, but we'll give him every minute we can to try and make him fit.
If he is a doubt, look, obviously he brings something different to your team, but in that position he plays, it feels like you've got good options at the moment. Yes,
we do. In our centre midfield, got good strength and depth in that position currently with obviously Joe Willock, Sean Longstaff, Louis Miley, three quality players, all bring something slightly different, but three quality players that can step in. Obviously Joelinton is unique, and that's why we give him every chance to be fit.
I know you probably won't have decided your team yet, but in what condition is someone like Louis Miley to come in and play if selected? He certainly looks really strong in that cup match against Bromley played a few weeks ago.
Yeah, Louis I think in a great place. I think he's been in that place, I think, for a while. He's trained regularly. He's built that momentum that you build from the training that we deliver. I think his performances have been really good. Very happy with him, but very happy also with Sean, how he's training behind the scenes. And Joe Willock's got outstanding attributes. He played against Arsenal previously and did very well.
Just finally from me, you said a moment ago that hopefully the future looks a bit brighter around the corner with regards to I'm guessing you mean the transfer window in the summer. What can a sale of someone like Lloyd Kelly to Juventus for the money you've brought in, what can that do for you in the summer in terms of what you're able to do in terms of bringing players in and spend?
I think I've said many times it's a difficult thing to give definitive, clear answers, and that's not me being difficult as to what the future looks like. But I think certainly the last year, we know we've been managing a situation that we had to make decisions, as I've said many times before, that we wouldn't have necessarily made from a football perspective. But hopefully by being prudent and making good decisions now, the future we won't be making those decisions. We'll be making purely football-based decisions. When we get to that point, I can't give you a definitive date. That would be wrong of me to do so. But I think everything that we're doing is trying to lead us to that point.
Thanks, Keith. Mark?
Morning, Eddie.
Morning.
In terms of PSR and the limitations it imposes on you, do you think you're now going to have to be a lucky manager regarding injuries with that sort of lighter squad, as you mentioned?
Yeah, maybe slightly. Because I think there's some injuries that there's nothing you can do about. There's some maybe you can control a little bit more. Touch wood, I don't like talking about injuries too much, but I felt I had to mention it because of the situation that we now find ourselves in with the lighter numbers that we spoke about. But I think, yeah, hopefully this season's been pretty good in that respect. Hopefully it can stay the same.
And Arsenal, obviously, they'll be flying after confidence-wise after the Man City win. But how do you think they're going to approach the game? Sort of gung-ho from the start, or do you think that it's going to be a bit like a chess match in the first half?
I think you'll see two teams try to impose their style on each other. I don't think Arsenal tend to change too much. They're a strong team in most departments. They've got, you could see against Manchester City in their last game, the quality that they possess. I thought they played very well. But I think both teams will be themselves or try to be themselves and try and win the game. And we need to be ready for that.
And tomorrow it's apparently the 14th anniversary of the famous 4-4 draw between Newcastle and Arsenal. So this really could be quite low scoring, I suppose, with what's at stake.
Well, who knows? That's the beauty of football. So you never know. You can prepare a game, you can plan a game in your head, and then the reality can sometimes look totally different. But we need to be ready and adaptable for whatever the game brings. We need to bring our experience to the game as well. I think lots of different phases of this game we're going to have to be very good in.
The worst aspects of social media were obviously brought back into the spotlight with the comments about Joe Willock. I mean, what advice are you giving your players regarding social media? I mean, staying away from it doesn't solve the problem, but do you think it's not a bad plan with the sort of season entering the difficult phase it is?
What, to stay away from it, you mean?
Social media, yeah.
Yeah, as you say, I think in this day and age it's difficult for players, if that's been their life, to suddenly leave that environment. Certainly from my side, having never entered it, I think it's quite easy to stay away from it, and that works for me. But everyone's different, and I think that we don't want to see those type of comments. I thought Joe handled himself in a brilliant way, I have to say. But I'm sure those comments would have hurt. We hope to eradicate them from the game totally and from social media moving forward. But all you can do is report it and conduct yourself in the right way. That's all you can do.
Thanks, Mark. We'll go to Damien, Ian and then George.
Eddie, you've been very clear of the impact of PSR and what it's meant over the last few windows, and nobody would argue that there isn't great quality in the squad. But since June last year, you're 4 bodies down on what you were, and by most metrics that has weakened the squad. How frustrating and difficult is that from a coaching point of view when you're trying to build a team?
Yeah, I think that there's challenges. There's challenges to every situation you'll find yourself in as a coach. Whether you're buying players, whether you're selling players, each has its positives and each has its negatives. I've spoken many times, I think, the challenges that sort of the last few windows has given us, and I think we need to always try and navigate away from the problems and try and find a different place to control our thoughts, really, because these things can sometimes act as a strength for you, and I think that's very much how I'm trying to pull the group together, have real unity in smaller numbers, and we keep fighting in every phase, and sometimes that unity can be really, really powerful. So I don't think it's ideal. We'd love to have brought new energy into the group. That's being very honest, but that wasn't to be our world in this window. So we have to make the best of the situation.
Just looking at the game, many of your players went through the excitement of the semi-final 2 years ago, the disappointment of the final after that. How useful is that experience in what you've got ahead of you tomorrow?
Yeah, I think it is useful. I think we can draw on those experiences that we had in the semi-final against Southampton. It wasn't simple. I thought we played well actually in both games, but it wasn't a simple passage. There's certain hurdles we had to navigate in that game. Of course, the final was a different experience, but I think we can still look back to it and can help us in these moments. We had the Champions League campaign as well. All those experiences you go through. So I do think the group has got the armoury to deal with different moments that can happen. We've got a lot of experience in the team, players who've played in big games, and hopefully we can utilise that if we need to.
Thanks, Damien. Ian?
Morning, Eddie.
Morning.
You mentioned how yourselves and the supporters are a very potent team together. But if my own family and friends have anything to go by, there's an awful lot of nerves ahead of the game within the fan base. And that could transmit itself, understandably, in the early stages. How do you ensure that if there is anxiety in the stands, it doesn't spill over onto the team?
Well, we certainly don't want your family anxious. So if they need a phone call from me, then...
I'll raise that, yeah.
No, I think the supporters and everyone connected with Newcastle, I'm sure there'll be a range of emotions we're all feeling. But I think you have to channel those thoughts. And what I've tried to do with the players is channel those thoughts into excitement. These are the games we want to be involved in. I don't think we want to look at it any other way. What an opportunity for us. And I'm not talking about necessarily the scoreline leading into the game, just the game itself. It's a game we're going to try and win. And I think that's our best way to attack the game. just look at it purely as a one-game opportunity to get to a cup final.
When you won the first leg 2-0, there was a kind of a feeling that would be very, very difficult for any away side to come to St James's Park and win. Since then, of course, Bournemouth have beaten you by 3 clear goals. Can, in a strange sort of way, that game act as to help you in that you know that if you are below your best against a very good side, then they can thump you on home soil?
That's one way of putting it. I think you have to use any experience. So yeah, the Bournemouth game, the Fulham game, I think they were useful reminders for us. Not that I need it. The level is so high, and one mistake can cost you in a game. So we're going to have to be really diligent. We're going to have to be very good on the small details, as we always say. I'm talking set plays here, really important part of the game. Every part of the game, we're going to have to be on top of our game, which we weren't in those respective defeats that you mentioned. Useful reminders for us, but this is a new game, and we have to be very positive going into it.
Thanks, Ian. George, Craig, and then Lee Ryder.
Morning, Eddie.
Morning.
The cliche is that 2-0 is the most dangerous lead in football. Do you agree with that cliche? And how has the lead informed your messages to the players, your preparations, your approach to the game, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably a conversation for another time, because I think you could go in depth on that. I think the 2-0 scoreline in itself, would we want to be in this position? Yes. Is it a dangerous scoreline? Well, it's only dangerous if you don't perform. So for me, the message is we have to perform, and we have to be ourselves, and we have to be all the good things about Newcastle when we're playing well. That's the challenge, and I think if we are, then hopefully everything else takes care of itself. So focusing too much on the scoreline and the dynamics of that, I don't think is healthy for the brain. So just think a clear head. Let's attack the game in our way.
And then the other side of it is that Arsenal away did feel kind of very clinical. Same about the quarterfinal. You've answered questions about this before. There was no dressing room victory photo at Arsenal. Draining emotion from this cup run feels like it's been something that's been a very deliberate policy. How have you gone about doing that, and why is it important?
Well, I think sometimes you can build the game up unhealthily. What we've tried to do this season is approach every game in the same way. Every game's important. Every game is, it's a bit of a cliche at this stage, but a cup final for us. When we talk pre-season training games, we don't want to see a big change of emotion or big change in attitude towards any game. When you're representing a club like Newcastle, I think you have to understand the enormity of every match and take pride in everything that you're trying to do to try and win that game. That's what we've tried to do, and we won't change that approach now. So yes, we know the magnitude of the game, but we have to approach it in the same way that we have for every other game this season.
Thank you. We'll go to Lee, Dominic, and then Louise Taylor. Oh, sorry, Craig. Sorry, Craig.
Morning, Eddie. We spoke last week about the sale of Miguel Almiron putting you the right side of PSR, and then it being a necessity. To that end, did the subsequent exit of Lloyd Kelly then give you a little bit of scope headroom to do something this month with regards to incoming? And if so, was a decision then it had to be taken not to do that?
No, that didn't give us any positive headroom to bring a player in. We knew from the off with this month we weren't in the incoming market. It was about controlling some sales that navigated us out of a problem. So that's where we were the whole month, and it never changed.
And just quickly on Callum, is he going to be back tomorrow? Callum Wilson.
There's a chance. So we've got another important training day today. Let's get through training before we make a decision on him. Thank you.
We'll go to Lee, Dominic, and Louise.
Eddie, on the whole situation in general, what happened yesterday, are you frustrated that you weren't able to bring a player in this month?
No, I don't think frustrated is the right word, because we've been planning and looking at numbers and opportunities for weeks and weeks and weeks. So frustrated yesterday, no, because that was a long time in the making, really. The window ended probably how we expected it to at the start. So, no, different emotions for me. I think overall an element of frustration that we haven't taken the squad forward in a positive way, because I think that's everyone's aim and ambition when you go into a transfer window, but not sort of frustrated yesterday on the day, if that makes sense. It's more of an overall feeling that we're very keen to try and take the team forward and progress and try and improve and get better. Obviously, we haven't been able to do that this window.
And obviously there's lots of stories now saying that you're going to have 80 million to spend, 100 million to spend. You're saying that there's no set figure in that, you know, you're going to have to build long-term PSR-wise. That feels like the answer, unless they change the rules, of course.
It'd be nice if they could. But I think for us, no, that there's no set figure. I know people have said all sorts of things, war chests and all that. Yeah, it doesn't quite work like that. I think we're still in a position where, of course, we communicate and discuss what's going to happen in the next window, but that's not now for a few months.
Just on the game, obviously the fans are going to have the scarves with them. They're going to try and create an environment for the team. On the other hand, Arsenal will also be looking for that early goal as well. How do you look at the strategy in a game where you are 2-0 up and both teams could do with an early goal?
Yeah, but I think we've probably had mixed success with that this season in terms of our starts to games. I think we've had some very good in our recent run of wins. I thought we were starting the game really, really well and back to the levels that we maybe were in our Champions League season. A couple of times this season we've been frustrating where we haven't started in the right way. Start to this game is going to be really, really important, as it is to any game. We need to set the right intention. We need to set the right body language for everyone to connect with who's coming to watch us. I think if we can do that with the qualities we have, that will help us a lot.
Dom?
Morning, Eddie. Just on the Lloyd Kelly transfer, just how did it come about from your perspective? Because he was obviously on the pitch on Saturday, and then an hour later, that story sort of broke, and it all happened very quickly from there.
Yeah, probably similar to how it broke to everybody else. Hearing things through the correct channels that there's an interest in Lloyd and it's getting to the levels that the club will listen to. Obviously, regarding Saturday, I was treating Lloyd like I would any other player and trying to make the best decision to help us in the game.
And Sven Botman's return from injury, Matt Targett's return, the former Dan Burn, Lewis Hall. Does that make the loss of Lloyd Kelly more palatable, even if you were reluctant to lose him? Yeah,
I think our defensive strength, I think it is an area of the squad that's, touch wood at the moment, pretty good. Obviously, we have Jamal Lascelles still working his way back to fitness. He's still going to be a few weeks behind where we are currently. But yes, I think that strength and depth will help us. Obviously, we have a couple of left-sided centre-halves that you've mentioned there that are really strong and playing well. But obviously, it takes away a little bit of our depth and leaves us stretched if we get any injuries.
Okay, I'll go to Louise, Martin and then Luke.
Hi,
Louise.
Have you had conversations with the ownership in Saudi Arabia, direct conversations explaining the whole PSR situation and the strategy for this window? And if so, does that explain why you're very measured, why you're not throwing your toys out of the pram, which many managers in your situation in this context could be?
No, I haven't had direct conversations with them. That's for other people to do, and obviously I speak to people directly involved when I need to. I think if you did react like that in the modern world, then I don't think your managerial reign would last too long, because you've got to work with the club in every moment. There's no point me working alone for my own objectives. The club has to act in a certain way currently with the financial climate. This isn't the club's issue or the owner's issue. This is the rules and regulations we're trying to comply with. So I've got to work on behalf of the football club in all moments, good and bad. And that's what I'm trying to do.
And finally, 2-0 is a stereotype dangerous lead. Has the psychologist been involved, or will he be involved in talking to the players about handling it?
No, I don't necessarily think that will happen. I think, but definitely my messages and the coach's message is really important to try and mould and shape our attitude to the game, and that's the key thing. I think sometimes you can over-egg these things. I think the players know what we need to do. We need to perform well, we need to play well, and we need to try and win the game.
Thank you.
Martin?
Morning, Eddie. It's difficult to isolate it, but where do you rank that Arsenal first leg victory amongst your best results here?
Yeah, I answer this question a lot, Martin. You realise I don't sit at home trying to rank these things. I've got better things to do. Yeah, I don't tend to do that, believe it or not. It was a good performance. I was pleased with it, especially at a ground that we haven't done particularly well at. So that was a nice feeling. But it counts for nothing because now you go into this game and you start all over again, really. And I think that's important that we try to have that mentality.
And there is a sense of nervousness around the city. How is your mood and how important is the crowd?
My mood's good. I'm recovered from the weekend's game, which was hugely disappointing, and always takes me a while to recover from defeats because I like to absorb the feeling. I like to then analyse and try and figure out what went wrong and why it went wrong and then try and put it right. I've always gone through the same process. But I think then when you come out the other side of that, you look forward to this game and you think it's probably a great game for us to come out of that defeat, planning and preparing this exciting opportunity. And that nervousness that you describe, obviously I'm not aware of or open to. But I think those nerves should quickly, hopefully, for everybody connected with Newcastle, turn to excitement and what could be. And I encourage that to be the case.
Gail from Sky.
Yeah. Can we just do a little bit of team news to start? Hi. Did everyone come through okay? And could you just give us a little update as well when we might see Ben White back in the squad and also Saka range of when he might be available to you, please?
No news from the game against City, and Ben is still out. Hopefully after the break he will be available.
And Saka?
No, not yet.
No, I know not yet, but you sort of said sort of mid-March maybe?
I don't know.
When we sat here on Friday, you talked about these big games meaning more than just the points, the boost, the emotion, the sense of momentum. As you kind of arrived at training ahead of this game, how different is the feeling around the place and how much can you tap into that with what you've got ahead tomorrow night?
Next stop is a final in Wembley, so we know how big that is, and you can feel it. You can feel it straight away. The boost that the game gave us, winning against City, the manner that we did it, and the fact that it's a game that is the closest competition we are into a final. So we're going to give it a real go.
As you're very well aware, the window was shut last night, and without bringing the reinforcements that you said you'd have hoped or liked to have brought in. Were you close? And the work that you've done over the last few weeks, how much will that help going into the summer of knowing exactly who you want in terms of reinforcements, particularly in the striker position?
We had a clear intention, which is always there is a window open to explore the opportunities to improve our squad with players that can impact it. We haven't achieved it, so yeah, we are disappointed in that sense, but as well we are very aware that we only want to bring certain kind of players, and we have to be very disciplined with that as well, and I think that we were.
Okay, cool. And we'll go to Ian from TalkSport.
Hi, Mikel. How are you?
Hello.
Arsenal haven't beaten Newcastle for the last 4 or 5 games, becoming a bit of a bogey team for you. I mean, can you just talk about when you come up against a team you haven't beaten for a while? And as a player, did you ever have a bogey team?
I didn't know that word, but it's another one. They are a very difficult team to play against. They've been different games. We beat them at home last year in a good way. Obviously, this season has been different with 2 very different games as well, I think. So, yeah, another opportunity ahead of us, a big one that can take us to Wembley. So, really looking forward to it.
Did you ever have a team as a player you could never beat or you had trouble beating?
Barcelona, never beat them. That was one.
Everybody had trouble with Barcelona. Arsenal haven't won the League Cup. I was amazed by this. Arsenal haven't won the League Cup since 1993. They've only ever won it twice. Does that amaze you that this trophy, Arsenal, have got a great record in?
Yes, because with other cups, domestic cup, we have an unbelievable record. So, yeah, historically it's been difficult and tough. So, good opportunity again to make history.
And idiots like me sat here in January telling you need a striker, but you scored 5 against City, you've won your last 4 games, scoring 11 goals in the process. So you must be confident that you can go to Newcastle and score and the number of goals you need?
Yeah, there are two separate things. One, obviously, I think we talk very openly from my side, a club perspective, about the intention to improve the squad if we have the capacity to do it, and then most importantly, to keep improving the team, to keep improving the individuals within the team, because it's the ones that we have and we love, and that's it. And from now, there's no discussion about it, and we focus in the things that we have continued to do, even though the window was open.
And last one for me: the players get nervous in a semi-final. Does the manager get nervous in the semi-final?
I don't know if that's a word, excited for sure, willing, hungry, enthusiastic, because we are very close to play a final, and hopefully we can achieve it tomorrow.
Thanks, Ian. We've got Harry from BBC.
Yeah, there's been lots of talk about strikers, but obviously when you've got players contributing goals from all over the pitch, that really, really does help. Miles Lewis-Skelly was great at the weekend, not just in his goal, not just in the celebration, but overall. Could you just expand a little bit on how his rise has kind of gone down in the dressing room? Because William Saliba told us after the game that he's not surprised anymore by how well he's playing.
Yeah, well, probably the players are the best to express how they feel about them. In this particular case with Miles, because they are sitting next to each other, they share the pitch, which is the most important thing. I always said, it's how they feel about these young players when they come in. Do they trust them? Do you feel they feel that they are as strong or stronger with them? And that's the feeling that I get. That's why as well we give them the opportunity, because for me they are ready in our eyes, but in the team's feeling as well, they feel that really can be better with them.
I guess it's a similar story for Ethan Nwaneri as well. As a manager, do you feel kind of personally responsible for their development and making sure that that pathway is there for them? And then does that come into your thinking when you do go into the transfer market?
Very much, but with every player, regardless the age. Obviously, the age has a different component, especially when they are not even 18 years old, and we have other cases as well in the team when as parents, I imagine that they rely on us in educating them and in transmitting the right values to them, in looking after them, protect them emotionally especially and physically. And it's a lot of responsibility, but thankfully we share it with quite a lot of people, and I think they're in good hands.
Tom for Blender.
Hi.
After the first leg, you said it was only half-time, and there's been a big gap. It's been a very long half-time since that last game. And a lot has happened since then as well, including this huge win at the weekend. Does a win of such size give those players extra confidence that you can turn around the deficit that you have to?
Yeah, probably when you compare the emotional state of the team straight after the defeat and the manner that it happened and how we are today is very different. Because we come from very strong performances, some great wins, and especially the last one at home against Man City. So it builds momentum, and after that game as well, we have a break. So it's the moment to go, full gas, ready to go for it and try to approach it in the way that we believe is the best one to be in that final.
And after the game in City, I asked you whether you hoped Monday would be a good day, and obviously it maybe didn't go the way that we and you and fans perhaps wanted. Have you been in any way frustrated that it wasn't able to go and bring in kind of the reinforcements that you were very vocal about this window wanted?
No, because when you try your best and you do things with the right process and you see the people that we all share the same intentions and wills, and after you don't achieve it, okay, for sure there are things to learn from it. There always are, but you have to move on, and that's a piece that was important in the moment, and now we have to move on, and nobody knows whether it is better to done it or no. We will know probably at the end of the season.
Simon, stand up.
Okay, you talk about being disciplined now in terms of the window. Does that give you hope that in the summer you've got more room to get who you really want to do by sort of not doing anything now and waiting for who you really want?
An extra card. I don't know. What I mean about that is in everything, in the kind of profile, in the kind of play that we believe that can really make us much better financially. There is, in a lot of ways, a lot of things that we must stay in the lane that has taken us this far, and from there try to improve.
And I remember you touched on it before. You spoke a bit about Ethan, sort of long term. You sort of maybe playing as a number 9. I just wonder, given the situation now in terms of options there, are you now kind of accelerating that and thinking maybe in these sort of 4 or 5 months you might have to play him as a striker? Is that something you're considering?
We're going to have to be very flexible in the front line, and now the ones that we have on our feet, make sure that they stay fit and they keep contributing. Leo can play in that position. Raheem has played in that position. Ethan, I think, can play in that position. Martinelli can play there. So let's see in relation to how everybody is, moment, opponent. But at some point, I think we're going to have to try something different.
Athletic.
Hi.
You touched on the break that's coming up after the Newcastle game. I was just going to ask, is the Dubai trip something that's coming up? Can you confirm that?
I think it's coming, yes.
Obviously, last year wasn't the first time you went there. You went a few years before as well. I was wondering, do you kind of keep it similar every time you go, or do you kind of change up how you, I guess, do all the non-football stuff to kind of keep people fresh?
There is a lot of things that will be very similar. Location, where we are staying, where we trained, but then obviously we have to modify it. We're going to be in a different moment of the season, different numbers. Probably the team needs other stimulus, other things. So we are preparing a few things. Hopefully it will work like it has worked in the last few times.
And just on Ethan, he's getting close to a record that was set by Michael Owen and Wayne Rooney for goals scored before turning 18. I was just wondering, with records, are those things you kind of encourage your players about? Because I remember you talking about Saka and kind of legacy was a word you kind of mentioned in relation to him. So would that be something you kind of encourage going for records and stuff like that?
No, I wasn't aware of that records. The only thing that I want with him is that he continues to do what he's doing, and play with that freedom, with that tenacity when he's on the pitch, and with that confidence, because he's got the ability to make it happen. And whether he does that or not, it will be a matter of time.
James, ESPN.
Ricardo, I know you've been asked a lot about the market already, but could you just break it down for us? Was it a case that the right player simply wasn't available this month?
I wouldn't like to go into much detail. We couldn't do it for certain reasons, and we have to accept it. That's it.
Can you give me one of those reasons? What were those reasons? Was it money? Was it not the right fit?
It was a combination of things.
Because you've done so much in your 5 years here to change the culture, in the dressing room, and it's so positive here now. Is part of it that you don't want to gamble on maybe a character you're not sure of? Was part of that, thinking that you want to make sure you wait for the right person?
No, that wasn't part of the process. That wasn't an issue. With any player that we were trying to find.
And just finally for me, I was watching an interview that you gave with Sky last week. You talked about the size of the squad being very short last summer. You said you had 19 outfield players, 3 of them were coming back from serious injury. You kind of knew then it was a bit of a risk. Given that, how much of a gamble is it, do you feel, not to add numbers in this window?
It's no gamble, it's reality. I think we have to face the reality as well that we have. We have the players that we have. Some of them are on loan. We never had a squad of 35, 40, 45 players. So many other clubs, they have 45 players in their list. We don't have that size at the moment. It's our reality. We have to do so much in the last few years that where we are. So we're going to have to evolve there as well and have more players from the academy and the ones that are here to be fitter longer. That's a job that is permanent and it keeps evolving, and we need to be in our toes.
Okay, finally, in the live section, we'll go to Phil at the back from PA.
Just sort of following on from that theme, you're slightly worried until you don't have enough numbers to compete for the Premier League and to compete in Europe?
No, now I focus on the numbers that we have, how to maximize them, how to make the best out of them, and listen, with all the problems that we already had, we are in February, and I think it's remarkable what the team has done, so I have full faith in them.
And obviously, Kai's had his critics, but now people know that he's the main man going into the second half of the season. Do you think he'll thrive on that he's sort of your solo forward?
Well, I think Kai has played so many games and it's been so important when other players, some big players as well, were available, So it's not because a player is not coming in his position that's going to be more important. From my opinion, there's nothing to do with that.